Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be getting started in just a moment. I'm going to give everybody a few seconds to start joining us, but thank you very, very much for coming along today. Okay. Let's get underway. So thank you very, very much for coming along to today's session, which is all about studying veterinary science in Australia and how you can become a fully qualified and internationally recognized veterinarian at a world top 50 university at the University of Queensland. My name is Margot Chandler and I'm from the University of Queensland's Faculty of Science. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today, and thank you so much to our hosts, NSHSS, for having us along here and arranging today's webinar. Our colleagues online are Hannah from the SHSS team. We also have a lovely Mr. Professor Jörg Henning online, who will be talking to you about the veterinary science program, and also Mr. Carlos Botero. And Carlos is from the UQ Future Students team. He is the Senior Principal Advisor for the Americas. Thank you to my co-hosts for being here, and let's get started and talk about our fabulous programs in Australia and how you can become a veterinarian. So a little bit of housekeeping. The presentation today, it will be shared with you afterwards. We will make sure to send it via email as well as a copy of this recording. And you're very, very welcome to engage with us throughout today's event. Please feel welcome to ask questions via the chat function. Make sure that you are respectful to your peers who are online. And so we kindly request if you can keep your video turned off and your microphone turned off, but you're very welcome to interact with us throughout, and we will be taking your questions at the end as well. So just a little bit of an introduction to the University of Queensland. Now, Queensland is situated in Australia. It is a state in Australia, and this is where the University of Queensland is based. You can see here on your screen a photo of our main campus. This is the UQ St. Lucia campus, a very famous area called the Great Court. And I'll introduce you to our global reputation. UQ is a world top 50 university, and we rank in the top 100 globally across all of the major rankings. We are very, very proud of this prestigious status that we've achieved in our rankings. And as a university overall, we're actually quite a large, comprehensive university. We teach into all disciplines and areas, and we are comprised of more than 55,000 students, and of that, about 21,000 would be international students who've come to Australia to study abroad. We have 3 beautiful campuses and 6 faculties, and we teach across 30 teaching and research sites and 8 research institutes. So it's a fabulous place to come and study. And of course, we are situated in Queensland, which is an absolutely beautiful location. You may not have heard of Brisbane or Queensland if you think of Australia. Australia, I think a lot of people know Sydney, they know Melbourne, maybe the Gold Coast, but you might not have heard of Brisbane yet. But Brisbane and southeast Queensland is where UQ is located, and Brisbane and the southeast Queensland area offers a relaxed and safe lifestyle, a beautiful subtropical climate, and of course it's a very multicultural and diverse population that we have here. As a city, we're very, very lucky to be blessed with beautiful weather. We have an average temperature of about 21 to 28 degrees most of the time throughout the year, and that is not Photoshop. That is how our skies look. This is a little bit of an old photo. It is a lot more developed now in the Brisbane CBD if you come here, but you can see that we have a population of about 2.5 million people, and approximately a third of our residents were born overseas. The other reason that you might get to know Brisbane is not only because we're only located about 1 hour away from the Gold Coast, but also because, actually, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you know what's happening in Brisbane? in about 9 years' time? If you know the answer, put your information into the chat. I'd love to see if anybody knows this already. I'll give you a few seconds. No takers yet. Okay, I'll end the confusion and the querying. It's because we're going to be the host of the Olympic Games in 2032. So we are very, very proud to be hosting the Olympics here. And the reason that I mention this is because if you stop and think about where you're choosing to potentially study abroad, you want to think about the long-term perspective of, maybe living and working in that location. And when you think about what happens to every single city that hosts the Olympics, the Olympic Games tends to change and revolutionize that whole area. And so it means that there's a lot of investment, infrastructure, and growth as well. And it's not just in areas related to engineering or sport, like you might think. It means that there's often a population boom. And of course, all services and industries need to grow. So we may need more veterinarians in the area. You never know. Okay, so at UQ, the Bachelor of Veterinary Science program, which is what we're here to talk about, is situated within the Faculty of Science. Within the Faculty of Science, we teach across all disciplines. You can see here a couple of the different disciplines in the sciences that we teach across or teach into. And in terms of our rankings here, we do extremely well in the world rankings for many different science disciplines and subjects. So that includes being number 16 in the world for plant and animal science. And of course, we rank number 1 in Australia for a number of these different science subjects, as you can see here. UQ has a very, very strong focus on teaching excellence, and we provide students with the best opportunities and practical experiences for their time in university. And in fact, UQ has won more awards for university teaching than any other Australian university, something we're very, very proud of. In fact, the Australian Teacher of the Year award was actually given to a UQ lecturer just this year. So we're very, very proud of that, to have the best teacher nationally at UQ. We have a number of different program offerings at the Faculty of Science. So if you're coming out of high school or you're currently in high school, you might be interested in an undergraduate program, a bachelor's degree, which you can see listed on the left-hand side of your screen. And we also offer graduate or postgraduate programs, as they're known here. These are master's programs that are available to students as well. So I'm not going to go into all of these different disciplines. We're here today to talk to you about veterinary science. And so I just want to set the scene before I hand over to my colleague, Professor Jörg Henning. We do have 3 campuses at UQ. So St. Lucia is our primary campus. It is located in the Brisbane district, and we have a fabulous campus here. It's been rated one of the most beautiful campuses in the world. We also have a specialist health and medical related campus. So this is our Hurston campus. And we are very, very fortunate to have a beautiful campus named Gatton, which is our dedicated animal and agricultural science campus. So this is located about 1 hour west of Brisbane, and it's home to the Bachelor of Veterinary Science program. So we'll get to know more about the Gatton campus in just a moment. But really, we're here today to talk about the Bachelor of Veterinary Science. So I'm going to hand over to my fabulous colleague, Professor Jörg Henning. Hello, Jörg. I will just stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Maybe if you keep sharing and I'll tell you when the next slide comes up and you go through the slides. Can you do this?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah. Happy to do that.
Yeah, if you go maybe to the next slide. Yeah.
Yep.
Great. And the next one. Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Jörg Henning. I'm a veterinarian by training. I'm a professor in epidemiology. So I study disease outbreaks in animal populations. And I teach this also to our students. So similar to Corona or COVID outbreaks in animal populations. And I do a lot of work in low-income countries as well. I'm also the director of students and admissions, and I used to be the international student mentor, and I'm also heavily involved in international student recruitment. So if you decide to study veterinary science with us at the University of Queensland, you will see a lot of me, in particular in the first few years of our curriculum. Next slide. So our University of Queensland Veterinary Science program ranks number 44 in the world. Across all the hundreds and thousands of programs, we are number 44, and within Australia, we are number 3. Our program, UQ is part of the what we call the GO8, the top 8 universities in Australia. And our veterinary science program is the only undergraduate program in veterinary medicine that has accreditation from the American Veterinary Medical Association. So what do I mean by this? Veterinary science programs have to be accredited for veterinarians to work in specific countries. And our program is unique. We have an undergraduate program that is accredited by the 3 main bodies in the world, which is the American Veterinary Association, which permits you to work in the US, but also in Canada. We have also the accreditation from the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. So with your degree, you can also work in Europe, in the UK, and in Singapore. And of course, we are accredited by our own body in Australia and New Zealand, which is the Australian and New Zealand Veterinary Board Council, which permits you to work in New Zealand, in Australia. So remember, we have an undergraduate program, and we are the only program in Australia that has an accreditation from the American Veterinary Medical Association. And I assume that most of you are from the US. So with your degree from the University of Queensland, you are able to work in the US and Canada. Our veterinary science program is really driven by teaching excellence, and this is really highlighted by the many awards our teachers have won over the years. And we also have a very strong research record, and this combination of research excellence and teaching excellence really results in a strong graduate satisfaction that we see every year when we graduate our students. Next slide, please. So what we offer are really world-class facilities. The veterinary science school, or the School of Veterinary Science, was moved to the Gatton campus. It's about 10 years ago now, which meant that completely new facilities were built for our veterinary school, which is now probably the best one in the Southern Hemisphere. We are also proud to have developed a curriculum with a very strong clinical focus. So we offer excellence in training and diagnostics and treatment planning, but also problem solving and decision making. Our program is very applied with a strong focus on practical skills, which include animal handling in the first few years, and then in the later years, more clinical skills. And again, another unique thing with our program is that you have all the animals you're going to work with on one campus. You don't have to move between campuses. We have a very large campus, and we have all the facilities. We have horses, cows, we have pigs, we have chickens, we have small animals, we have wildlife here as well, all on the same campus. Next slide, please. So our veterinary science degree, it's called a Bachelor of Veterinary Science. It's an equivalent to what you may be more familiar, which is a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, which is a postgraduate program. Our program, it's an undergraduate program, which means it's only 5 years and it's not 6 years. So you don't need to complete an undergraduate degree first. You also don't need any prior handling experience or any other experience. And we train you in a range of different areas. In the first few years, we focus on foundational biomedical knowledge, and then we train you in sort of more expert knowledge and specific skills in the following years. And what you see on the slide is a range of different topics we teach you in. So animal management and production, animal diseases, diagnostics and therapies, clinical skills, which include surgery, radiology, internal medicine, and other things. But we also teach you on biosecurity and public health and non-technical skills, which are very important for veterinarians, communication skills, because you have to communicate with clients, customer service, professionalism, and business skills as well. Next slide, please. So what you see here on this table on the left is basically the veterinary science program offered at the University of Queensland. And as you can see, in the first sort of 1.5 years, we focus on normal animals or on healthy animals. So you have courses in biology, husbandry, nutrition. So we're not focusing on sick animals, we're focusing on healthy animals. And then sort of towards the second semester of the second year, we focus on diseases or problems in animals. And once again, you see a range of different topics that are taught. And then starting in 4th year, and particularly in 5th year, we teach you how to fix those problems, how to do surgery, how to provide treatments to animals. As I mentioned before, we have a very practical program. In the first 3 years, we provide 600 hours of practical training to you. Then in 4th year, we have 130 hours of clinical training. And then year 5, you won't have any lectures at all. You just trained clinically. So you move between different clinics. Some of them are on campus, but also others are not on campus. In addition to this, we have clinical placements in year 2 and 3. You work with the industry. Basically, you work on different farms. And then in year 4 and 5, you work in different clinics. That's what we call our extramural studies. But once again, we have great hospitals here on campus. We have a small animal hospital, and we have an equine specialist hospital. So people with horses that have any sort of problems come from really from afar to have their horses treated here on our campus. Next slide, please. We also offer a very strong support program. As Margot has mentioned, we are based on the Gatton campus, which is a rural campus, and we have about 500 students here, and I think about a quarter of them are international students. We have a veterinary leadership program for our veterinary science students, which starts basically in your first week. We have team building activities where you're involved in getting to know all your other students in your cohort. We have a buddy system where students from higher years support students in younger years. We have a range of different veterinary focused associations like the UK Veterinary Student Association. We have set up an international student support network, and we have special interest groups and other groups. Next slide, please. So across the 5 years of veterinary science students in our program, we currently have about students from 28 different countries, which represent 33% of about 600 students across the 5 years. A number of years ago, we set up an international student mentoring system, and I used to be the international student mentor for many years, and we have international student representatives in each year, and we meet in regular intervals. Often we meet monthly, and we organize specific events for international students, because we know it can be challenging for international students to come to a different country and to study in a different environment. We organize events like you see here on the pictures, Harmony Day, where we exchange food from different places around the world, international student meet and greet events, and so on. Next slide. We also have a number of clubs and society on the campus, and you can see here on the different logos just a range of those different clubs and societies. So some of them focus on veterinary science. So there's clubs that focus, for example, on One Health or on animal welfare, or on maybe public health. But then we also have Gatton-wide clubs, and some of them you can see here on the slide. Next slide, please. So in the following, we would like to talk a little bit more about what are the requirements. If you are interested in studying veterinary science, how do you get into this program? So just to summarize it again, it's a 5-year program. We have only one intake, which is for us in semester 1, which starts always in February, which is sort of the end of the summer here in Australia. The cost is about $75,000 per year. And this is the annual fee. each year is divided in 2 semesters. And we currently take about 120 students per year. A third to 40% of students of those 120 are international students. It is an undergraduate program, so you don't have to do an undergraduate degree before you join our veterinary science program. And what you see here are the requirements for UQ students. We call it an ATA score, but Margot will talk more about the specific requirements for applicants from the US. What we need are prerequisites, in particular, if you come directly from college or high school, you have to have training in chemistry, mathematical methods, physics and biology. You have to have a good knowledge of English. We use a test called the IELTS test to test your abilities in writing, academic writing and speaking in English. But of course, if you are from the US or Canada and you have your high school degree from an English-speaking environment, you're not required to do the IELTS test. And we also require you to do a specific psychological test, which is called the CASPER test. Please go to the next slide. And one more. So what is the CASPER test? The CASPER test is a situational judgment test. You basically are exposed to 14 different questions. Some of them are video-based questions and some of them are text-based questions. You are confronted with a scenario, with a problem, and you have 5 minutes to answer specific questions to each scenario. There are psychologists, there are writers who basically give your answers a score, and the combined score should really evaluate a number of different professional and non-academic skills. Your high school transcript is important for the admission to our program, but we also want to see your non-academic skills, in particular, your skills in communication, problem solving, professionalism, equity, empathy, and so on. The test is run not by UQ, it's run by an independent company. It's an online test, it's 90 minutes. There are some practice tests online. And if you go to this specific website, you have some more information about the CASPER test. Next slide, please. So the results are sent directly to UQ. The results are measured in what's called a set score, which is your deviation from the mean. So you're basically evaluated against everyone else who's doing the tests on the same day. There's no right or wrong answers. We basically want to see only what are your skills in problem solving, communication, and so on. There's no set pass mark. So once again, you're evaluated against your cohort. But you will receive some information about your quartile. So not your exact score, but where your score is within quartiles. Once again, more information is on this website. Next slide. So there are specific test dates for this CASPER situation judgment test. One has already passed in June, but you can see there the other test dates for doing this CASPER test. There's a fee involved, it's $90, and you have to book this test online. Next slide. So before I hand over to Margot, just a quick sort of overview. How can you apply for our veterinary science program? Well, there's a number of different ways how you can do this. You can do this directly via the Australian system, which is called the QTech system. You can go through an agent, or there's the third option, and Margot will talk more about this. This is through VMCAS. After we receive your application is reviewed, and you will then receive an offer letter. You might still have to do the CASPER test, or you do the CASPER test before you submit your application, and you might receive an email requiring to provide some additional information. Please remember, this is a quota program. So we we can't take more than 120, 130 students because it's a very, very intense course. We need a lot of staff and equipment and animals to run this course. So we have only a limited number of spaces available. If you want to have more information, here is the link, and we will share those slides after the webinar today. So I think that's my last slide, and I hand over to Mark.
Thank you so much, Professor Henning. That's fabulous. Appreciate you covering all of that information. Before I get started, I might just look at one of the questions that's come through in the Q&A. So really great to see everybody's already asking lots of questions. But there's one question in particular that's come through that I think would be great for Professor Henning to cover quickly. Someone's asking for confirmation that they can come into this program potentially straight out of high school and they don't need a degree before they attend. Is that correct, Professor Henning?
Can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. You don't have to have an undergraduate degree if you want to join our veterinary science program. It's an undergraduate veterinary science program. And yes, it's unique. My understanding is that most US-based veterinary science programs are postgraduate programs.
Great. And there's another question that's come through that from the same audience member. Does the school after graduation or before graduation help you to find a vet-related job?
Yes, we do. So what we offer throughout the program are sort of career forums, because the veterinary degree is a very broad degree. Many of you, if you decide to study veterinary medicine, will go into practice. So they will study. They maybe work in small animal clinics or large animal clinics, but others might decide to work for the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, or they work for government agencies, or they become specialists in pathology or emergency medicine, or they decide to become a consultant. So there's many different things you can do with your degree. And we basically offer sort of coaching throughout the program about all the different things you can do with your degree. And then in 5th year in particular, we help you writing basically your applications to different veterinary clinics. We guide you also to a certain degree to find jobs, but we not offer a specific service where we say, oh, we provide every veterinary science student with one job. We link you up with all the different clinics or places where you can work, but I guess it's up to you then to make the contact with those potential employers. I hope this answered the question. Yeah.
Thank you. The same attendee has a few other questions, but I might carry on with the explanation of the entry requirements as well, so that we can ensure that this is covered. So keep dropping your questions into the Q&A, everybody. Thank you so much for the questions that have come through already. We will be answering the ones that we haven't yet attended to, so please bear with us. What I wanted to do next was really to talk about the entry requirements, specifically those for students from the US. So you will have seen before that we have some subject requirements that you need to meet, as well as a minimum entry score. So just to explain, in Australia, when you're applying to university, you don't need to submit any kind of college admissions essay or letters of reference. It's purely based on the academic merit requirements. And then, of course, for a program like this, we also have some inherent additional requirements. That's the Casper Situational Judgment Test, or SJT, as Professor Henning mentioned before. So what will be assessed is your previous studies from high school, But we can also look at students who might be coming from either a previous degree at university or college. And of course, you can come in partway through and transfer into the program potentially. We'll address that in more detail in just a moment. Looking at high school entry requirements, you can see here we've got the minimum entry scores listed and also the subject equivalents for advanced placement exams and also SATs. Please make sure that you are meeting the subject equivalencies. So making sure that you have English covered as well as mathematical methods. The equivalent subject there might be AP Calculus, for example. And then, of course, you need to have chemistry and one of either physics or biology or biological science. There are some grade requirements there. You can find all of this information on our entry requirements page. For students who might be coming from Canada, we've also got here the common diplomas from each of the provinces and the minimum entry score and the equivalent subject there. I should mention, if you have done high school in either in the US and you've completed obviously in an English language mode, then you don't need to submit an additional test result, IELTS test result to show your English language levels. So if you have not done high school in the US, that's when you would need to consider doing something like an IELTS test or Pearson PTE or TOEFL, for example. And you can see here, if you've done perhaps the IB diploma, International Baccalaureate, or the GCE A and AS levels, the equivalent scores are listed here for you as well. As Professor Henning mentioned before, you also do have to take the situational judgment test, and that test is compulsory for everybody. And just a reminder, you do have to do this this test on one of the available test dates. So the test dates you can see here are for the 2024 admissions intake, which is in February. And you can only take that situational judgment test once per admissions cycle. You can, of course, register with your UQ student ID. That's part of the process. So you have to apply to UQ first, receive an offer with your UQ ID, and you use that to register for the CASPER situational judgment test as well. There is a portion of this that's called snapshot. That's not necessary if you are registering this year. You don't need to complete the snapshot component on the Acuity website. Now, not all students will be able to meet the entry requirements directly into this program. It is a quota program, which means it's very competitive entry. And so it's very, very common for students to need or want to take an alternative pathway into the veterinary science program at UQ. So we have a couple of different pathways. If you don't quite meet the entry requirements that we've shown before, we can help you meet those requirements through one of the following options. If you're missing just one of the subjects or a couple of the subjects, so perhaps mathematics, which might be calculus, AP Calculus, for example, or if you're missing chemistry, then you might complete something called a UniLearn module in that specific subject. So it's equivalent to completing the senior high school subject here in Queensland. And we can combine that with your high school records or your university records to meet those subject prerequisites. UniLearn is a very, very straightforward process. It's a short course. You do it online and it costs about 1,200 Australian dollars. And essentially it takes about 4 to 6 months to complete. So it's a fairly straightforward process. And if you need to complete UniLearn, it would be listed on your conditional offer letter from the university. You also have the option of completing something called UQ College Foundation Program. This is if you have issues meeting the subject and also the minimum score requirements or rank requirements, as we call them. So this is a program that can take about 10 months to complete. We offer it here at the university. And so you would essentially be completing a set of high school subjects to make sure that you meet the subject requirements and also the grade requirements for entry into the program. So that's your second option. Another option that students will consider if they are interested in veterinary science, this is also a standalone program about to mention. So if you're interested in working with animals, but you're not focused on being a qualified practicing veterinarian, then you might consider the Bachelor of Veterinary Technology program. This is a 3-year program. It is available as its a standalone program, but also some students will complete 1 year in the Bachelor of Veterinary Technology if they weren't successful gaining direct entry to the Bachelor of Veterinary Science program. And then after 1 year of study, they will reapply for the Bachelor of Veterinary Science Honours program. This is a longer process because essentially you need to achieve a very good GPA or grade score in your studies. You also still need to meet the English language requirements, and you also will still need to take the CASPER situational judgment test as well. So in essence, you might be able to transfer a couple of credits over into the Bachelor of Veterinary Science program, but it effectively would add an additional year of study to your degree program. So just keep that in mind. And UQ does have other programs as well that can be considered or that might be of interest to you if you are interested in animal related programs and disciplines. We have the Bachelor of Veterinary Science. This is a 3-year program, and we have majors in, we have about 36 different majors and minors, and that includes things like ecology and conservation biology, marine biology, zoology, and then there's also a minor in entomology. We also have the Bachelor of Wildlife Science. This is a wonderful program, also based at the UQ Gatton campus. And of course, we've got the Master of Animal Science at the postgraduate level. So lots of different options for you, and we're happy to share information about those other programs in just a moment. If you are looking at coming into the Bachelor of Veterinary Technology program, this would be the entry requirements, as you can see here. Both programs, the veterinary science and veterinary technology programs, commence in February each year. But you can see here, it is a slightly lower threshold for entry into the Bachelor of Veterinary Technology. You don't need to have chemistry, physics, or biology. Those are recommended. You will need them if you're transferring into the Bachelor of Veterinary Science. But of course, you can take a look at the website listed at the bottom of your screen here, and it will give you all of the entry requirements for the year that you're coming in terms of IB and GCE levels. These are those scores here. Now, I mentioned before UniLearn. So if you're missing any particular subject prerequisite for any UQ program, you can take these equivalent UniLearn subjects that you can see here. So if you're missing AP Calculus or Mathematical Methods equivalent subject, you can take the Senior Mathematics UniLearn course. There's also a Chemistry UniLearn course, and of course one for Biology and Physics. So some combination of these may help you to meet the entry requirements, and all of this information is available on the UniLearn website that you can see at the bottom of your screen. This is probably a quicker and cheaper option than perhaps doing something like Foundation program, which is nearly a year long. I should also mention that and address this more generally. As I said before, you can come into this program directly out of high school if you meet the entry requirements. We can take a look at your high school transcripts, your diploma, your SATs and AP exam results. But again, if you've done an associate's degree at college, or perhaps you're coming in with even a completed degree from a university, then we can consider both your university studies and also your high school studies. So we'll address that a bit more if anybody needs that information. My advice to everybody would be that you provide us with all available documents when you apply to the program. So that would include things like your high school diploma, your high school transcript, so the subjects that you've studied and the grades you received, as well as if you've taken AP exams or your SATs, we would also need to have those verified. If you've come in from with some university or college studies, then in addition to your high school records, we would recommend that you provide your official academic transcript from your college diploma or university degree. If you've completed the degree as well, please make sure to provide your award transcript. Now, having said that, if you were looking for credit exemptions, there would be some limits to that, but it is possible to be considered for credit exemptions on a case-by-case basis. So UQ's admissions team will always assess your application as an individual as well. Okay, and just a quick reminder about those different programs that we have available to you within the Faculty of Science. So if you are considering a profession or a career in veterinary science or animal-related subjects, there is always an option for you. Again, I would encourage you specifically to explore either the Bachelor of Science or the Bachelor of Veterinary Technology or the Bachelor of Wildlife Science. Those programs are great if you've got an interest in animal related disciplines. And of course, you can find a full list of our programs on the UQ website. And we also have some program guides that are available. And again, we'll make sure to share this information with you after today's webinar concludes. UQ also does have scholarships available to students. This website that you can see here on your screen lists all of the available scholarship opportunities at the University of Queensland. It is regularly updated, so please make sure that you're checking back. As a quick word of advice, you will tend to find in Australia that most scholarships are not directly tied to your study application to the university. Often there is a separate scholarship application process. And also in Australia, most scholarships do not cover full tuition fee funding. So it is very, very rare to see a 100% scholarship. However, there are many opportunities that are very worthwhile. And of course, many of those will be based on academic merit. But we also have scholarships for cultural, sporting, and all sorts of other criteria. So please make sure to check this website. And the recommendation would be to apply for these scholarships. Make sure you're looking at the application opening and closing date. And of course, you may need to write a statement of purpose when you are applying for that scholarship as well. Okay. I wanted to open the floor to some questions from our wonderful audience. I can see everybody's been putting questions into the Q&A, so we'll address those now. We've got Carlos, Hannah, and Professor Henning online, as well as myself. But before we jump into that, I wanted to just remind everybody that you're very, very welcome to get in touch with our team. Myself and also the rest of the Science International team, including my manager, Ms. Grace Lee. You can contact us at science.international@uq.edu.au. I will put that into the chat in just a moment. Please feel free to welcome to reach out to us. In addition, if you have specific questions about the application process specific to the United States or your home country, then you're welcome to get in touch with Mr. Carlos Andres Botero Rodriguez, who is the Senior Principal Advisor for the Americas at UQ. Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and I will open the floor to questions. So, Jörg, did you have any particular question you wanted to address before we dive in?
So I might go through them and answer some of them and hand others to you. So I start on the top. So is there any financial aid for foreign students? I guess you covered this already. There's a limited number of scholarships available that are offered by UQ, but I think the website that the web link that Margot has provided will give you some more information. Are there any dorms on the Gatton campus? Yes, there are. So we call it a hall of residence, and I think we have about 450 rooms for students. So we have a large proportion of our students actually staying on campus. Other students actually staying in a nearby town called Gatton, or students, in particular in the high years, they might move to Brisbane, to the bigger city, and there's a free inter-campus bus between the Gatton campus and Brisbane. So there's a number of places where students can stay. I'm not exactly sure about the application process for the dorms, but maybe Margot can follow up on this. The tuition fee would not cover the accommodation. I think there's a separate cost for this. Do you want to add anything to this, Margot?
Thank you so much. Yes, I can see Carlos has very kindly put in the accommodation options available at the Gatton campus. So we have a fabulous dormitory called Halls of Residence on campus. There's about 4 halls. I think there's about 500 students that stay in the halls. And again, about a quarter of those would be international students. And you can find a lot of this information on the Halls of Residence website about how to apply. We do see a lot of students, particularly those coming straight out of high school or in their first year of study for the Bachelor of Veterinary Science program, will tend to stay on campus until they, settle into their program and get to know some friends. And then maybe after when they start their second year of study, they might move out into a share house or something like that. But UQ has a wonderful dedicated accommodation services team. So they are able to assist you with finding accommodation, not just within the dormitories and residential colleges on campus, but also they have a list of private rentals and also UQ houses. So if there's anybody who's considering coming to Australia and bringing their family, those UQ houses that are around the Gatton campus are often home to some of those students with families. The other thing to mention with the halls of residence is, of course, you can, this is a really great option if parents are concerned about their their child's well-being. There's pastoral care included as part of the accommodation services. So you're looked after. There's really, really great student mentoring and study advisor sessions that are run through the different dorms. And also you can package meals in, so you don't even need to cook if you don't want to. That's a really great option for everybody. There is more information available on the link that's just been shared into the chat. Carlos, just going back very quickly to the financial aid situation, I think a lot of students in America will apply for education loans. Is this correct? And do you have any advice to our audience on this?
Yes, Margot, thank you. Students are allowed to apply through the government loans. So that's an option for them if they want to study with us. So that shouldn't be a problem for them to apply. And there are also some private companies who also have very good like products, like financial products for students to study abroad. So that could be an option too.
That's fabulous advice. Thank you so much. Professor Henning, were there other questions that you'd like to help address?
Yeah, so I just go through them. So the next question was about transferring to a doctorate degree. I assume that you mean the DVM, the Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. So there's no need to transfer into a doctorate degree, because with the Bachelor of Veterinary Science, you are a veterinarian, it just has a different name. I think that's what you mean. So there's no requirement to transfer into a doctorate degree. The Bachelor of Veterinary Science program, just to reiterate, it's only 5 years. A DVM would be at least 6 years. With some universities, it's even 7 years, which also means you save a lot of fees, because I guess you pay only fees for 5 years instead of 6 or 7. Do you have to do a different training to become an equine veterinarian? No, you don't. So we cover everything in this program. So we trained across all the different species, equine, cows, pigs, small animals, wildlife. So there's no specialized training in equine medicine within the program. However, if you have a particular interest, of course, particularly in year 5, you can focus more on equine practices that you want to work in, but you don't have to do any specific additional training to become an equine veterinarian. There was a question about scholarships. We covered this. Are there lizards in the curriculum? Not just lizards. I guess you will see a lot of unique Australian wildlife. So you definitely will see snakes. We have big lizards called guanas. They also sometimes come into the clinic. You might see other marsupials that are admitted to the clinic. So you definitely will have a good share of wildlife in the program. And we have very good veterinarians that are specialized in birds, different types of birds. So again, there's beautiful wildlife here in Australia. The CVA transfer, I'm not sure about this. So it's not sort of my area of expertise. Maybe Margot can answer this.
I am not 100% sure. It is, Alicia, are you able to clarify what CVA is, or Hannah or Carlos, if you know the answer to this, we can address that. Working towards my CVA by the time I graduate high school. Please, Alicia, if you wouldn't mind clarifying what CVA is, otherwise I'll quickly Google it. Okay, we'll carry on, Jörg, with the questions.
How many countries can you work in with this degree? Well, I don't know the exact number of countries, but as we said before, with the American accreditation, you can work in the US and Canada. With the European one, you can work in all the European countries that have accreditation bodies for veterinary medicine, plus Singapore, plus South Africa as well. And then, of course, you can work in New Zealand and Australia. So the total number, the exact number, I don't know. I guess the only way to find out would be to go to the accreditation bodies and look into their documentation. But I can't give you the exact number. There's something about chemistry units and the school start. Maybe I hand over to Margot for this.
Thank you. Great question, Charlotte. So you can complete this with your college chemistry classes potentially. So what I would suggest is, if you haven't taken chemistry AP, then you might wish to, when you apply to UQ, the recommendation would be to provide your high school transcripts and your diploma and any AP and SAT scores that you might have. In addition, make sure you include your official academic transcript, so your official records from college, but also I would suggest providing something called course profiles. So if you want to meet the chemistry subject requirement with your college subjects, then what you need to do is make sure that you provide us with a detailed curriculum, I guess, syllabus equivalent. And the syllabus is required so that we can assess whether or not that is equivalent to chemistry AP or chemistry in Australia. So yes, it's definitely possible. The more information that you provide us with, the better. It always helps us to assess. Great. Hopefully that answers that. Jörg, there was a question here. What's your advice to somebody who is still in high school and wants to attend UQ?
My advice, I mean, we don't have the requirement for animal handling, but I think it's really helpful if you see some veterinary practices before you start the program. So you understand, what's required for being a vet. It's a beautiful profession. But it's not just about treating animals. As I mentioned before, communication with clients is important. I would recommend that you use all the opportunities you have to to see how veterinary practice works before you start with the program. I guess that's all what I could say at this stage. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Gabrielle has asked, does the school year start February 2024? If so, what does it mean for those whose school year finishes in May or June? This is a really, really good question. Thank you for asking this, Gabrielle. So the application deadline technically for the Bachelor of Veterinary Science is 30th of November, the year prior to commencement. However, we would strongly recommend that you, if you're serious about doing this program, don't leave it until the 30th of November to apply. In fact, the earlier you apply, the better. So as part of the application process, you can start that. Say if you wanted to commence in 2025, if you're graduating in May, June 2024, you would need to wait until February 2025 to commence the program, but you could submit your application now while you're still in high school or doing other college or university studies. And that way the application assessment process can begin. It takes a little bit of time, so make sure that you're allowing as much time as possible. The reason that we suggest this is because it is a quota program. So in some ways, it's a first in, first served, as in, you know, the first people to meet the requirements and to satisfy every condition on their offer letter will be offered a place in the program first. So it is important to make sure that you're putting in your application nice and early so you can receive your UQ offer with your student ID number, and then apply for the CASPER situational judgment test. So it would just mean there's essentially a bit of a study gap, about 6 months or so before you commence your studies in 2025. So to reach, Charlotte's asking, can they use AP scores, ACTs, SAT combination, or do they just need to choose one? And the answer is, I believe we can consider all of them. So any combination can be worked together. If you've sat multiple tests, please make sure to submit all of those scores and results, and we can always consider that and let you know if anything is missing. And can you apply to the veterinary program and other UQ programs in the same year? Yes, absolutely. You can submit an application for multiple programs. So if your first preference is the Bachelor of Veterinary Science and your second preference might be the Bachelor of Veterinary Technology or the Bachelor of Wildlife Science, you can make sure to indicate that on your application form. I will also just say a word of advice. It might be a recommendation to apply through a UQ approved agent. They can assist you with this application process, and I'll make sure to share in the chat where you can find a UQ approved agent as well. Michaela's asking about the zoology major in the Bachelor of Science. Professor Henning, do you have any comments on the zoology major, or is this a little bit out of your remit?
No, it's I guess we don't have zoology really in the course, so I can't really comment on this.
Sure. Michaela, I'll share a link in the chat now for the Bachelor of Science, and you can explore the different majors and minors that are available there. The zoology major is available within the Bachelor of Science, so it is different to the Bachelor of Veterinary Science program, but essentially it will teach you about the how animals relate and interact with their physical and biological environments. So you'll be combining study of animals with things like biostatistics, ecology, evolution, genetics, insect science. And then of course, you can also look at things like climate change biology, wildlife and conservation biology, entomology, and a range of other topics like marine biology, fisheries biology, environmental physiology, aquaculture, all sorts of things. And UQ is really beautifully positioned to offer animal related subjects and programs, because we are the only Australian university to have 2 island research stations. So one of them is located in the area called Moreton Bay or Quandamooka, and that's only about an hour's drive from Brisbane. But we also have Heron Island Research Station, which is based on the Great Barrier Reef. So as part of your studies in, for example, the Bachelor of Science, you could look at visiting some of those really unique environments and ecological systems. Jörg, were there any questions you wanted to pick up while I carry on?
There was a question about marine veterinarians. So we are lucky here in the school. We have 2 veterinarians that are really engaged in marine research. I mean, you will, within the course, you will learn about fish and marine, well, medicine related to animals living in the sea. But if you're really interested in marine research, 2 of those lecturers will teach you in different courses. And I might put in the chat some links to their work, and you can see they have done really amazing research in particular with humpback whales and the song patterns of those humpback whales and how the song patterns are changing. They're also part of a marine center, which is another sort of research organization within UQ, and Michael Knotts, one of the academics, he's actually the leader of the Moreton Bay Research Station at the moment, the one that Margot has mentioned. So there's many opportunities for you to engage with marine wildlife, basically, while being based here at the University of Queensland. So I put some links into the chat about those marine stories. Yeah,
that's so cool. Fabulous. Thank you. We've got clarification on what a CVA is. So this is an accredited public education program for K-12. So I believe it should be possible to complete your CVA, and UQ's admissions team can always assess your high school qualifications if that's a CVA or a high school diploma. So make sure that you submit any of the documentation, Alicia, or anybody else completing a CVA as well. I think we will need to explore that one a little bit more with UQ's admissions team, but it's always worthwhile putting in an application and seeing what's available. Gabrielle's asked for an honours, whether or not an honours chemistry class qualifies for the chemistry requirements. Gabrielle, great question. It probably depends on your university. We would need to, or also your high school, we would need to take a look at the syllabus, so the teaching curriculum in that honours chemistry class in order to assess that. Okay. Michaela is asking, what would be a good program or major for someone wanting to become a herpetologist? Jörg, do you have any advice on how somebody should become a herpetologist?
Not really, no, sorry, I can't.
Alicia, if you, sorry, Michaela, if you wanted to ask or send us an email to the science.international@uq.edu.au email address, which has been put into the chat, I'd be happy to put you in touch with the program director for the Bachelor of Science. The program director, Dr. Gureen Ang, is an entomologist and is very heavily involved in teaching ecology and also zoology. So if you're interested in becoming a herpetologist, I'm sure that he would have some very solid advice for you there. Okay. I I think we've answered that question. For a postgraduate degree, could you transfer from a different university? Yes, is the answer for sure. So again, Jörg, would you like to explain how the credit exemption process works? So if somebody's coming in with, maybe they've already done a 3-year bachelor's degree relevant to animals and veterinary related topics, what's the process there? Do we always give full? Are they able to start sort of in year 4 of the 5-year program necessarily?
Now, normally we only provide credit for courses in the 1st and 2nd year. It's very unlikely that you will get credit for the higher years because our training is quite specific, very practical and applied. So we often provide credit for the fundamental courses. If you have done, for example, some animal related degree and you have covered already animal nutrition or certain aspects of biochemistry, some aspects of professional studies. These are sort of the common courses for which we provide credit. Animal handling, it's another course where we usually don't provide credit, only if you have done really a full-on course with animals, because it's not just the handling of animals, it's also safety that's important for us. So you really have to see how confident you are in handling different types of animals. There is a process where you apply for credit. It's a central UQ process. You have to submit the courses that you have done. You have to provide details about the courses. And then on a case-by-case basis, we evaluate if we can give you credit for certain courses.
Thank you. Can you get a PhD from UQ? Absolutely, yes, you can. Jörg, do you see many students go on to do a PhD after the Bachelor of Veterinary Science Honours program?
Often, I guess it depends really what you want. I mean, we always recommend go at least for a year or 2 into practice, to use your degree. And but some students decide to go straight into research. I mean, that's the great thing with this degree. You can go straight into research. I'm probably also an example where I actually didn't really work for long in practice. I went straight into research and worked for a number of research organizations and later on did a PhD. So yes, after you finish, you can start your PhD and you're welcome to do it at UQ.
That's great. And I did put into the chat earlier a link to the UQ Graduate School website, which gives you a lot of information about how to do a PhD. And I'll also quickly share some information on the application requirements for a PhD as well. Okay, let me just see. I think we've answered most of these questions live now. If there were any final questions from the audience, this would be your opportunity. So please make sure that you're asking. I see a final question. Do we have to take ACT test to apply? No, absolutely. You don't have to do the ACT test. Make sure that you're looking at the entry requirements website that I will share again with everybody in the chat. There is a widget on the website. You can put in the different tests that you've done or your qualifications. And there is a widget that will show you what course requirements there are. And again, as I've mentioned, if you are missing just 1 or 2 subjects in that particular diploma or qualification, then there are other ways that you can meet those subject requirements, such as UniLearn or maybe doing foundation. If you're not sure, get in touch with our team via the email addresses that we've shared, and we can always check for you and give you more specific individual advice. Miranda's also asking, is being in a National Honours Society helpful? In terms of your admissions application to UQ, I mean, if you're in the National Honor Society, you've obviously got very good grades, so that's always a bonus. You're welcome to upload that documentation, but it's not a formal part of the considerations for admission to university at UQ. Jörg, would you see any benefits to the student within the program or their career if they're on the National Honor Society?
I must say, I don't know much about the National Honor Society, so I can't really answer this question. Margot, I was just wondering, should we talk a little bit more about WMCAS? Because I guess a lot of the applicants, particularly US-based, are probably familiar with the WMCAS. So there's basically 3 ways how you can apply for veterinary science at UQ, but maybe I hand over to Margot. I guess she's more across all those things.
Absolutely. So one option that we have is that you can apply directly to UQ. I've put a link into the chat before about how you can apply. It walks you through the step-by-step process there. You do need to pay a 100 Australian dollar application fee unless there's some sort of exhibition or virtual fair waiver code that sometimes comes up. Unfortunately, we don't have one of those today as far as I'm aware. But what happens is you can apply directly to UQ. If you have done high school in Australia, there's something called QTAC. But if you are applying from the from North America, there is also the AAVMC, which is the American Association for Veterinary Medical Colleges, and they have a system or a submission portal called VEMCAS. Now, this is a system that if you've done maybe a bachelor's degree in America, you might be applying to multiple universities for a DVM or the Bachelor of Veterinary Science at UQ. So if you're applying through the VEMCAS portal, and I'll make sure to share this in the chat in just a moment, then the VEMCAS portal is another option. So that's available if you want to apply to multiple universities. UQ, you can select from the list, and also you can select a number of other American institutions as well. Again, we would recommend that it can be helpful to use an agent, an education agent, or if you wanted to have consideration for any high school, university studies that you've done, always upload as many documents as you possibly can. And I'll just see if I can get that information up for you about how to apply via VEMCAS. I know the application process begins in about March each year, and it goes through until September. So the admission or the application deadline for the VEMCAS process is 15th of September 2023 for admission in 2024. You can actually apply to VEMCAS and then register for the CASPER situational judgment test using your VEMCAS ID instead of your UQ ID. We can check for both. Great. Okay. Emily's asking Jörg a little bit about what is studied in the veterinary program and what's the criteria for that? How do you assess, I guess, is the question.
So what do you study in the veterinary program? Do you mean the different topics that are taught? I guess in this one slide, I had an overview about the different topics that are taught. So particularly, basically in the first 2 years, we have sort of foundational skills. So we teach you in professionalism, in communication skills, in biochemistry, in anatomy, in physiology. So animal handling is very important. So we basically teach you in the fundamental skills that you have to have before you basically touch animals. Then sort of starting in second year, we will talk more about diseases in animals. So you will have lectures on bacteriology and virology, parasitology, all the different pathogens that affect animals. you will also start to have lectures on clinical aspects, and particular years 3 and 4 will focus on the clinical training. So there will be lectures on surgical skills. There will be lectures on first aid, on emergency medicine. There will be specific lectures for each animal species. So there will be poultry medicine, equine medicine, pig medicine, and so on. And then in year 5, you won't have any lectures at all. You just rotate through different clinics and different providers. Some of them are within the campus and others are external to the campus. So this is basically the different subjects you work through. So basically you have lectures, a lot of practicals from year 1 up to year 4, and year 5 is all practical. But also in the year 1 to year 4, you will have a lot of practicals. Some of them are on campus and others are off campus.
Great. Thank you so much, Jörg. I'm very mindful of the time. We've definitely gone over time now, so we will start to wrap it up. But I can see one final question from Miranda. I just want to make sure I understand that this program makes you a qualified veterinarian and you don't need a DVM. Is that correct, Jörg?
That's correct, yes. You don't need a DVM. You can work as a veterinarian in the US with this particular degree because we have the accreditation from the AVMA, the Australian Veterinary Medical Association.
Just put some information into the chat there about which different accreditation bodies that this program allows you to register with. So take a look at that information there, please, Miranda. And audience, if you found any of the information that we've shared with you in the chat to be useful, then please make sure to copy the text from the chat, highlight it, copy and paste it into a separate Word or Google Doc so that you don't lose this information after today's webinar concludes. We will be wrapping up in just a moment. If you've got any additional questions that haven't been answered here today, please make sure to get in touch with one of our team, and we will of course be sending a copy of today's webinar recording and presentation slides to you. Jörg, final thoughts. If somebody is in their senior year and they are hoping to prepare for entry into the veterinary program, is there any final words of advice that you might have for them?
I guess it's similar to the previous question. Try to see some veterinary clinics. I see what it's like working as a veterinarian. Talk to other veterinarians. Maybe talk to other veterinary students that you know. Just inform yourself about this wonderful degree that you might decide to study at UQ.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Professor Henning, for walking us through this fabulous program. And thank you very, very much again to our hosts, the National Society for High School Scholars. Thank you very much to Hannah for helping us with today's webinar, and also to my colleague, Mr. Carlos Botero, for also supporting the chat. We look forward to hearing from you soon, and we hope you might apply to UQ. Please feel welcome to get in touch with us if you've got any questions. And thank you so much for lending us all of your time today. It's been wonderful interacting with you. All the best. Have a lovely day, everyone, or evening, I should say. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.